Hello, and welcome to the Center Show. I'm Jim Layden, Deputy Director for the West Springfield Council on Aging and Senior Center. For today's segment, our topic will focus on property tax exemptions for older adults. Joining me today is Randy Austin from the Town of West Springfield Assessor's Office. Randy is the Principal Assessor who is responsible for areas such as tax abatements and exemptions, as well as to help the town make sure all its property values are at full value in keeping with state law. Welcome, Randy, and thank you for taking the time to join us today.
No problem. Good to be here, Jim.
Okay. So, Randy, can you tell the audience about the primary role of the Assessor's Office within the Town of West Springfield?
Sure. The primary role is basically to provide a vital financial service to the town that enables the municipal officials to prepare accurate and reliable spending plans. What we're trying to do is basically inform them of what real and taxable personal property is available to support the high level and quality of life for public safety, schools, public works, and recreation and other essential services that the residents expect.
Okay. Can you share your professional background and key responsibilities as Principal Assessor?
Sure. Well, I've been an assessor in Massachusetts since 2000 and started with the town in 2012 as a data collector and went from being the assistant assessor in March of 2013 to taking over the principal role in September of 2013. My key responsibilities are basically to establish a fair and equitable ad valorem tax values of the real and personal property, so real estate, you know, the land and any improvements, a home or shed or deck or pool would be an improvement, or personal property, so that's the assets of a business that they have that they're using to make money in the town of West Springfield.
Okay. Are the requirements you mentioned specific to West Springfield or standard throughout all cities and towns?
Well, many of the standards that are in effect in cities and towns all throughout the state, and those are standard. But there are others that are specific to West Springfield that reflect different options that we have adopted. So that's on a local level by the city or the town council. For instance, the age for the qualification for a senior exemption is 65. But the town has voted in and adopted 65. You know, it started at 70 and now it has voted in 65. So a resident needs to be 65 before July 1st to qualify age-wise for an exemption.
Okay. Okay. How are property taxes determined, Randy?
Well, the property taxes are determined by the amount of money that the town needs to run itself for the fiscal year.
Okay.
So we go by fiscal year, and that starts on July 1st and goes until June 30th. We just started fiscal 2017. So building up to the start of the fiscal year, all of the departments are creating budgets. So that includes, you know, the salaries and expenses for staff and supplies and everything that goes into running the department. All of those budgets for the school, police, fire, senior center, DPW, all of the different departments are added together, and it comes up with a total amount of dollars that are needed for the year for the town to run itself. Last year's tax levy was over $59 million.
Okay.
My office establishes and maintains the values for different classes of property, the residential, commercial, industrial, and then the personal property that I mentioned. The total value is divided by $1,000 of value, and the tax rate is determined by the city council. So we have a split tax rate here, meaning that there is a higher tax rate for the commercial and industrial as opposed to the residential. So when you have a larger municipality, a lot of times that is what will happen as opposed to having a single tax rate that everything is taxed the same. The commercial industrial who are here and the businesses are making money from the residents of the town of West Springfield, and so to ease the burden of what the residents have to pay, we split the tax rate, and that's determined by the city council.
Okay. Okay. So how does your office determine a home's value, Randy?
So there's a lot of different factors that go into determining that value. The total is going to be a combination of the land and improvements like the house and garage and other things that I mentioned. Now the size and quality of the improvements are recorded and valued according to price tables that are in our database. That stuff has to be maintained and be current, and also make sure that it's reflecting the current market values. So all of these things together need to be accurate to reflect the market value of the improvements in the usable land, and a comparison of recent sales in the town is what we use to determine that we're at that correct level. So we're looking at all of the sales that are happening in town, both residential and commercial and industrial, and making sure that they are within certain acceptable parameters for what we determine to be market value. We're basically trying to be within 2% of the market value.
Okay, interesting. So what if a homeowner disagrees with the property assessment value?
So that does happen, and if a homeowner disagrees with the assessor's determination of value, they can apply for an abatement. So the time to do so is in January of every year. Now, I mentioned that we're going according to the fiscal year, and that starts in July, and we bill quarterly in our community. So we send bills 4 times a year, in July, October, January, and April. Now, the first 2 bills are called preliminary bills because certain things haven't been set yet. We don't know what the tax rate's going to be, and we don't have our values certified by the state. And that is something that happens every year around November. It could be anywhere from October to December, even as soon as in July, if we were very well prepared. And it's tough to reach that July date,
Right.
being in a municipality of this size. Other smaller places, or even some that are close to this same size, can and do have everything set. But what we have to wait for is everything to be approved by the state. And then once we've gotten their okay, then the city council will vote on where that tax split is going to be, and then we know exactly what the tax rate's going to be. Your value has been approved and certified, and then that's why we call those second 2 bills, the 3rd and 4th quarter bills, your actual bills. So in the preliminary, it's estimate of what you paid last year, and the 3rd and 4th is actual according to what the now certified value from the state is, and the tax rate that's been voted in by the city council.
Do some people get confused by the tax rate and about when the bills are put out because somebody said it's preliminary?
Yes, and so that's part of why I went into as much of a lengthy explanation, because some people, they don't understand and they just look at it as, I have this bill, I have to pay it.
Right.
But there's a lot more that goes into it
Sure,
than that, and so I wanted to elaborate.
Yeah. So is there a difference between an exemption and an abatement?
Yes. So an exemption is an amount of tax relief that a qualifying person is granted by the Board of Assessors, whereas an abatement is a correction of a valuation, basically an overvaluation that has been identified and corrected by the Assessor's Office and granted by the Board of Assessors.
Okay. And how many people are on the Board of Assessors?
There are 3 people on the board in the town of West Springfield. I am on the board, and we have 2 other residents.
Okay. All right. So what are the requirements for an older adult to receive a property tax exemption?
So that depends on the exemption that's applied for. One of the things is that you have to own and occupy your property as your primary residence, your primary domicile. So you must have lived in Massachusetts for 10 consecutive years and owned a current or different property for at least 5 years.
Okay. So how does an older adult file a tax exemption within your office?
So the applications are available in the assessor's office and on our website on the assessor's page. But we send an application to anyone that received an exemption in the previous year. So we send those out on July, which is at the start of the fiscal year. And an exemption can be applied for anytime after that July 1st date and can be submitted as late as April 1st of the following year. So there's a big window for you to get that information to us and get it in. Now, we like to have the information before December because that's before those actual tax bills go out. So if we have it approved, we like to have it in the mix so that the amount is being taken out before the resident has to pay. So if it goes until April 1st, well then they, unless they're going to fall behind on their taxes, if they're current with their taxes, we would give them money back. We would like to avoid having to give them money back and just have it taken out so that it lessens the amount that they have to pay in those last 2 quarters.
Okay. So you send them a letter directly to home. Do you do any press releases, put things in the paper to let people know that the deadlines are approaching?
We have, and there are certain things that we're doing that are really kind of over and above even what we're required to do, because I'm very serious about making sure that all of the residents that are qualifying for these exemptions are taking advantage of them, because the guidelines and as we go along, the guidelines and people that are qualifying really need them with today's everything that's happening in today with inflation, and it seems like everything's going up and up.
Absolutely.
And whatever benefits that you can, you get to a certain point and you really need them to survive.
Right.
So.
I mean, that was part of the reason why we wanted to have you on the show today, because we get a lot of people that come to the Council on Aging that inquire about exemptions, how to file. Some of them come into our office, meet directly with our outreach coordinator about the process, about what documents they need, how much money they're eligible for. A lot of people are aware of it, but there also seems like there's a lot of people in the community that aren't aware of these exemptions.
And that's part of why I'm so serious about getting the word out, because I can't tell you how many times I've had someone come to me and say, I'm 83 and my 72-year-old friend just told me about this and I could have qualified for years and years, and they've been struggling the whole time. Right. And we could have been doing something to help them out.
Right,
so.
Exactly. Well, I think we're helping them out today, hopefully bringing awareness and getting this information out there.
Definitely, hope so.
What is the maximum reduction an older adult can receive for a property tax exemption?
So the largest reduction that we have available is for $1,000, and that actually started out as $500, but as a local option that the town adopted, it was brought up to $1,000. So just like it started at the age of 70 and the town adopted 65, it started at $500, but we have adopted $1,000, and that's the maximum amount.
Was there a reason why the town adopted that? Because it is a good benefit that would bring value to seniors in the community. I just was wondering the process of that decision.
And that's something that's really, it's a city council vote. And so someone had to be concerned enough to bring it up to the mayor or someone in the city council to start getting a little momentum behind it. Sure. And then when it gets enough attention, it's brought before the city council for a vote. And so pros and cons are brought up at that time. And after a certain amount of time, as you know, inflation keeps happening. So these limits don't always get increased. So, you get to a certain point where, okay, this is not enough of a benefit, and so you would want to vote in. So it's good to know that when we have enough inflation that this $1,000 isn't seeming as though it's a significant enough amount, that we have a local option to increase that and continue to give some aids.
Sure, well, it's a very good option. So can people receive multiple exemptions if they own multiple properties?
So, exemptions, no, they really can't, because exemptions are intended for the primary residence. Right. Okay. And so if you have multiple properties, I would say that most likely you're not going to qualify because you would have too many assets to qualify. Okay. So a lot of times that doesn't really become a factor, although in some cases it does, but you would have to have that one residence that was your primary residence. Okay.
So what are the income requirements for a single older adult?
So income-wise, for the senior exemption, the 41C, which is the $1,000, a single person has an income limit, so they can't make more in any given year or in the year in question than $31,568. That's the current asset amount, or pardon me, income amount. And now a married person, with a married person, the limit is $47,532, and that's something that does get updated with a cost of living increase every year. So before we start our mailings in July, we have already received information from the state anytime after April up until that time. That lets us know what we're going to multiply or increase this income, and also there's asset requirements too. Sure. And so those are raised each year to hopefully keep up with the cost of living. So
can you explain to the audience, are assets and income the same thing?
So assets and income are not the same thing. Income is money that you have coming in on a regular basis. So it might be a distribution from an IRA or a 401k, and that's considered your income because you have it set up so that you're receiving that, a pension or something like that. It's something that you have coming in every day. But, the asset would be your bank account. So even if you have an IRA that you're receiving a distribution from, the distribution would be income. Okay. But the total amount would be the asset.
Okay. Are there eligibility requirements for assets?
Yes, there are. So a single person has an asset limit of, and this does not include the home. Just so you know, the home is excluded. It will include the vehicle, but the asset limit is $54,088 for a single person. And a married person, it's a little higher with $74,371.
Okay. And you mentioned a couple examples about assets. Is there any others, Randy, that maybe we left off?
Well, let's see. Any rentals, timeshares, or additional properties in Massachusetts or elsewhere, stocks and bonds, securities and annuities, savings and checking accounts, CDs, money markets, mutual funds, IRAs or 401ks. We would need the balance of anything like that asset-wise as of July 1st.
Okay. And are there specific documents an older adult needs to provide to verify income and assets?
Yeah, we do. We need to verify all of those sources of income and assets with statements. So income information would need to be from the previous year because it's kind of an ongoing thing during the year. So we're in 2016. I'm not looking for your income from 2016. I want to know what you made last year.
Sure. Okay.
So your income from 2015, but your assets would be current. And any statements like that we would need as of July 1st, so as of the beginning of the fiscal year.
Sure. So a lot of those documents would be considered personal. How does your office protect privacy when it comes to those types of files?
So that information is not open to the public. It's not, nothing that would be disclosed. We do take copies, but it's all very confidential, and those are all shredded once the approval process has been taken care of. Once we know that we had everything that we needed and it's been approved, then we shred those documents, and it's all, we're concerned, especially in today's day and age, with identity theft and that type of thing.
Absolutely.
So we're very serious about making sure that it's all confidential and it's all taken care of appropriately.
That's great. So if an older adult goes to the assessor's department, does your office assist with filling out the application for the exemption?
Yes, we encourage people if they need help to let us know. I've even in some cases gone over and hand-delivered applications and offered to help the people out right there at their house if they're in a particular situation where it's very difficult and they don't have anyone else that is available to help them bring paperwork into the office and that type of thing.
Is
So
the I'm sorry.
whatever we can do to help.
Okay. Is the application a long document, or is it a couple pages?
It's a 2-page document, and it's more the assembly of all of your information, income and asset information, that is more of a challenge, just trying to make sure that you have, some people have more and some people have less, but a lot of the information comes with tax returns. In some cases, people are beyond the point where they're filing for a tax return, and so it's just those statements that we're looking to have them assemble and get together. So
Sure. Okay. So can an older adult access applications for exemptions online?
yes, the exemptions, they're available on the Department of Revenue website, and I also have a link to them on the West Springfield website in the Assessors page.
Okay.
So when it goes right to the most current document, it's basically a link to the Department of Revenue where the most current document is getting accessed.
Can you explain surviving spouse and minor child personal exemption?
Yes, the requirements are that the person has to live in the domicile. They must be that surviving spouse or basically not have remarried and be over the age of 70 by July 1st. There are assets included with that. The assets can't exceed the $57,158. The child must be a minor up to age 17 and living in the domicile, and there's no income or asset limit for the minor.
Okay. And are there special exemptions for those who are blind and veterans?
Yes, there are exemptions for blinds. People that are blind or legally blind individuals, we need the completed application, and then they're getting a copy, or what we need is a copy of their certificate of blindness. It's something that's issued every year by the state. So we get a copy of that just to prove that their status has stayed the same, and that's good to go.
Okay.
So veterans. Now veterans also qualify if they have a service-related disability. So there's 2 percentages of disability that the veteran could be affected by, and it has to be a service-related disability. And there's a $400 exemption that's available for anywhere up to 100%, and $1,000 for someone that is 100% disabled.
Okay.
So that is something that the first time we would need to see the information regarding the veteran's disability. And if it's not 100%, then we need to see that initially in the first year. Then we'll keep that on record, and all we need returned is the application. But if it's 100% disability, I guess sometimes that fluctuates and goes up and down depending on the person's situation. So we need a copy every year of their letter from the VA that usually comes out in June. Actually came out a little late this year. And we had people, getting nervous because they hadn't received it and they wanted to provide it to us, but we did get that straightened out. And so again, they would have up until April 1st to get that information over to us too. So yeah, we had all the information that we needed eventually, and that is what is available for the veterans, is that $400 and $1,000 for the percentage of disability that they got during the wartime.
That's great. So can any of the exemptions be combined for eligible older adults?
There's one other exemption that I did not talk about, and it's a 22D. And that's where there's a surviving spouse of a veteran who had passed away from Agent Orange, basically. So it's really specific to Vietnam vets. They've had some updates to it, but it's basically a total exemption from real estate taxes. It would be a total exemption for 5 years, and then after 5 years it would be $2,500 exemption. But it was just recently voted in with a new Municipal Modernization Act that it's indefinite, and it doesn't go down to that $2,500. I think, again, that was an older guideline that they realized, okay, the taxes are well above that $2,500, and that's why they have gone with a little bit more flexibility. So that is another one that is available. It's not as common, but we do have a couple residents in West Springfield that are qualifying and receiving that.
All right. And just so the community is clear, when people get an exemption, that means it's deducted off of their tax bill. They would not be receiving the amount of their exemption via check or some form of payment like that.
Correct. The only way they would receive a check is if they waited too long to get the information from us, and we weren't allowed, or we didn't have the time to previously deduct that from what they were owed. So if they had paid in excess of what they owed, say that they waited until April to get the information in. So it was April 1st and they got it in and they did qualify, but most likely they paid their first, second, and third quarter bill by this time. And depending on the circumstances, their fourth quarter bill might not be $1,000. So if it's less than that, we would send a refunded amount of what they paid in excess of what they had to, because they did qualify for the exemption.
And there's roughly over 6,000 older adults in the town of West Springfield. How many older adults are seeking the exemptions annually?
I would say, well, I do know that our total exemptions for all veterans and elderly I think were 420 last year, and I think over between 120 and 150 were elderly exemptions.
All right, well, thanks for your time. It was very insightful. You did a great job, and I hope the public is happy to learn what the types of exemptions and abatements that are out there. Thank you for your time, Randy.
No problem, Jim.
All right. Well, that concludes our center show for today. My name is Jim Layden from the West Springfield Council on Aging. Next month, we're going to have David Fedor from Fedor Financial Group talk about financial planning strategies for older adults. Thank you to the West Springfield public for this opportunity to serve you.